Hey guys, I thought I'd make a video about the lessons I learnt from season 10, failures, successes, and key learnings that I made throughout the season and wish I kind of looked at or approached earlier, or I guess realized earlier. So I would suggest every player who's serious about climbing and who's really serious about this preseason and next season to get to a rank that they might not have hit last season to do. Now, I did it walking my dog, so I took him down to the park and let him off leash and thought about what did I learn or what have I learned from season 10. And it was a really interesting process. It only took me about 15, 20 minutes, but I had a really good self-reflection where I actually stopped, got away from the computer and thought about League of Legends in an environment where I don't play League of Legends. Now, you can do it wherever you want. You can do it at home. You can do it before you go to bed. You can do it when you wake up. It doesn't really matter. But I think the best way to get something out of this is to ask yourself what you learned from season 10 or what you wish you knew in season 10 or when you started climbing, and do it in an environment where you don't play League of Legends. So it gets you kind of out of that thinking zone. Anyway, I'll go through the points one by one. So, the first one was not seeing the value in reviewing my own games. So as a coach, I was reviewing other people's games, and for some reason I was thinking, oh, well, if I'm reviewing other people's games, I'm kind of learning through their gameplay and understanding the game through that, so that, maybe I don't have to review my own games, when in reality, I was actually just too lazy, and I kept using the excuse that, oh, none of these games are valuable in reviewing, or I'm not going to learn anything from that, I know what I did wrong, or, I didn't really play that well, but there's nothing to learn from that game. And I kept using that as an excuse, when in reality, I would just prefer to queue up rather than review my game, when in reality, if I was looking at it through, what's the most efficient way for me to improve as a player, enjoy the game more, and ultimately hit my ranked goals, it would have been to, hey, take the time, even if it's only 15 minutes, like, just reviewing the laning phase of the game. If I took the time to review the game, I almost guarantee, and I know from past history, when I do consistently review my games, I always do improve, and I start finding focus areas that I really need to improve on a lot earlier on in the season compared to when I don't review games on a regular basis. So for this season, I should say, sorry, I've set myself the goal of trying to review at least one game of my own gameplay a week, and hopefully I can record these on YouTube and upload them for you guys, not only to keep myself accountable, but so that you guys can understand, okay, how do you actually review your own gameplay when you're in your own head, you're watching your own gameplay, and, trying to think outside of the box of why you made this decision, why it could be wrong, why it could be right, and getting out of your own narrative and trying to look at it, from a third person perspective. The second point was overvaluing solo kills. So it's a classic solo queue player ego thing where we think that we have to beat our lane opponent by getting a kill on them. So, getting a kill in laning phase, it's actually really hard to do when you're versing players of equal skill level. And so if you are getting solo kills on your enemy opponent, it generally means they're not a very good player, they had a brain snap, or they're having a bad game, and you're probably actually not going to learn a lot from that other than get yourself in a bad habit of overextending or overcommitting for that first blood, seeking that solo kill bounty and reward or endorphin boost that it gives you when you get a solo kill. But what I realized was solo kills aren't that important. They don't usually predict the outcome of the game. They might make you feel good for a little bit, but chances are the opponent just misstepped and you punish them, which is great. But the chances are, if you did solo kill them, they're not actually a very good player, and you're probably actually not going to learn that much through that game. So yes, in the short term, a solo kill is highly valuable because you'll get a lane lead, your jungler didn't have to help you, no team resources wasted for you to get a kill, therefore they're all open to continue to succeed in their lanes and you can even go help them. But in the long term, over a season, over a month, it doesn't actually make much of a difference, and overvaluing them ultimately just makes you feel bad when you don't get solo kills, which happens when you get to a certain rank where you're really reaching the top or the maximum of your natural potential as a player. Next one, win streaks don't feel as good as loss streaks feel bad. So I actually had a bit of trouble trying to explain this or trying to write it down in words. But basically, if you go on a 10-game win streak, it feels good. It feels, you're like, yes, I've done it. That's really good. I've, climbed a couple of tiers or something like that. But if you go on a 10-game loss streak, that feels so much worse than the win streak. And I'm still trying to figure out how to overcome this. And I think it's a natural human behavior that we overvalue when something goes wrong. Like, if I made $100 compared to if I lost $100. If I made $100, the excitement wouldn't be as much as the anger that I would have or the annoyance that I would have if I lost $100. If that makes sense. So let's say I made $100 selling, through my job, but then I lost $100 by getting robbed or on the stock market or something. That $100 lost feels so much worse, even though the net gain / loss is relative. So that's something that I'm still trying to deal with. And I think the best way I've learned to deal with it over this season, and when I've actually internalized it, processed it, and thought about it, was that I cannot look at League of Legends in 1 to 2 day blocks. So I can't just look at one day of games where I might have, played maybe 3 games or 10 games. And if it was a loss streak, if it was a win streak, it was 50%. I can't look at that on its own. I have to look at the big picture. I have to look at the month. I have to look at the whole season. I have to look at how I'm progressing overall. So maybe that loss streak, I was playing Rumble, or a champion I'm learning, or a champion that I know I have a good win rate on. In my last 120 games, I have a win rate of 57% on my Rumble. But in the last 10 games or the last 2 days, I went 10 losses in a row on that champion. Now, the chances of that are quite low, but the idea is that don't focus on that micro blip where it was stuffed up. It could have been bad luck. You could have been having a bad day. You could have been just playing bad. You could have got bad teammates. It doesn't really matter what the factor was. It's more that understand that League is not a day-by-day thing. It's a week-by-week. It's a month-by-month. It's if you're looking at multi-season gameplay, it's actually a season-by-season journey, and you need to look at it in the long term, not game-by-game. So that's kind of how I've been trying to process win streaks and loss streaks. Next one. I should never have to be carried in a League of Legends solo queue game. If I ever rely on my teammates to carry me or the enemy to stuff up, an AFK or a rage or a troll, I have lost the meaning of playing League of Legends. Of course, we're going to get games where we do get carried, and of course, we're going to get games where the enemy might have a rage or an AFKer, and therefore we automatically win the game. But I should never be actively seeking these games out or going, oh, I won that game because I got carried. I should never be in that situation. I should always be trying to maximize my value to the team, whether it's in a more supportive role, if you didn't go as well in laning phase as you hoped, or you lost your lane even. You still need to make sure that you are providing maximum value. You can't just go AFK tilt mode, mute all, and just split push for the rest of the game and refuse to group with your team, refuse to take objectives, and just, let it be a coin flip. That should never happen in your games, and you should never feel like, wow, I just got carried. Or if that's a feeling that you consistently have, maybe once a week or once a day, or, every few games, you gotta take a step back and go, this shouldn't be happening. I should, if I'm in my true rank or I'm close to my true rank, or I'm even playing below the rank that I think I deserve to be at, I should never be getting carried, because on average, I should be just as good, if not better, than the teammates I'm playing with. And therefore, I should have just as much potential and just as much influence over the game to carry the game as they do. Next point, don't focus on being perfect. Focus on being better than your lane opponent. So we're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be someone better than you. Even if you're the best in the world, eventually you're going to get taken off that number 1 position. So there is no point in striving for perfection. The idea here is that this is something that a key learning has come up through asking players who have climbed significant ranks in one season. So, bronze to platinum, gold to grandmaster, diamond to challenger, these kind of incredible journeys, they've always said, I didn't worry about being the best player there is. I didn't worry about playing my champion impeccably perfect in that current situation. I focused on just being better than my lane opponent. So if I can get just a couple of CS more here, if I can force them to back before I do, if I can then make them use their TP while I don't have to, if I can manage my wave just a little bit better, if I can roam just a little bit quicker or a little bit more often, or if I can just get to that next dragon 10, 15, 5 seconds earlier than they can, I am influencing, I am helping, and I am making sure that I am going to, over the long term of my growth, over my games in League of Legends, I am playing a consistent and sustainable way of League of Legends that is ultimately going to make me improve and be a better player. That's a good one. The next one is understand your champion identity. Now, this is kind of a Western term, or an English term, I should say, and the saying is, don't try to fit a square block into a round hole. So if you've got a round hole and you're trying to fit a square object, it's obviously not going to fit. That's the idea of this. Understand your champion identity. Understand how you contribute to that identity. So if you're playing Orianna, you play it as a control mage. How do you, in your own personal way, use that to your advantage? Don't try and make Orianna an assassin, because she's not. And that's kind of a quick one that you learn, and something that's probably pretty obvious. But understand that if you pick Orianna in a game, or you pick a certain champion in a game, you can only change their identity so much to fit the game. And you kind of got to understand that, yeah, you actually got to play this champion out the way they're meant to be played, even if it might not be the optimal way to play in that situation. Next one, focus on processes over goals. So this is a really important one, and the best way to explain this one is through an analogy, and that is everyone who goes to the Olympics wants to win the gold medal, or even just get a podium finish, first, second, or third. But the majority of Olympians who go don't win first, second, or third. So all Olympians have the same goals, yet only 3 people, the first, second, and third place runners or athletes, get the goals that they wanted. And, you know, they all might actually be going for gold, because that's usually what elite athletes do, and anyone in sport does. They're always going for the victory, always going for the top position. Yet not everyone gets there, and not even the majority of people get there. Not even a significant percent of people get there. The minority get to the goal. And so that's why it's super important not to focus on goals, because not everyone gets there. If we all focused on goal, like everyone focuses on goals, but not everyone gets there. So we actually need to not focus on the goal, but we need to focus on the process and understand what were the processes, what was the training, what was the things that gold medalists did differently to everyone else in that race. What did they do in their prep? What did they do in the race itself? What did they do that allowed them to get gold? And there's going to be some variables that you won't be able to change, like genetics, amount of time played in League of Legends, your ability to concentrate. You know, you might have I don't know the correct word for you, but you might have ADHD, so it's hard for you to concentrate, or you might be stressed at life, so it's really hard to, you know, be in a clear mindset when playing League. There are going to be variables that you can't change, but focus on the processes that make someone a good player, like your CS per minute, your kill participation, your roaming, your ward control, your map awareness, your ability to track the enemy jungler. Focus on these kind of processes. Don't focus on, I need to win this game, or I need to do this. You can have those goals, but you can't focus on them. They need to be outcomes of your processes and not processes of your outcomes, because that is not how it works. And then the final one is spend the time to eliminate a bad habit instead of playing around it. So I had the habit where I never used my function keys to cycle through my my teammates. So this is a concept that junglers really need to get comfortable with, particularly if they're wanting to climb into diamond and above. even platinum, it will make your life a lot easier, is using the F keys, and some people keybind them to your mouse or to other shortcuts. Using your F keys to cycle through your ally positions to understand their current lane situation and look at whether you can gank them, whether they're about to be ganked, and use that information to determine what you're going to do next. Now, obviously, this is a concept for junglers, but it can actually be applied to mid laners, to anyone who likes to roam, but also anyone who needs to get an understanding of what the current game situation is. Function keys. I knew this was a bad habit that I had that I never did, yet it took me so long to start consistently doing it. And every time I do it for a couple of games and then completely forget. Or I do it for 5 minutes of one game and then forget again. And so what I wish I learned earlier was I set myself a process of where, okay, I need to, every time I walk from top side quadrant jungle to bot side quadrant, every time I back, every time I'm walking to jungle camps, I need to cycle through all my champion positions, allied champion positions, find out their lane scenario, their situation, and understand, should I influence that lane? Can I help them? Should I not help that lane? And should I help this lane? Which lane should I prioritize to help? So that kind of concludes what I learned from season 10. If you are still watching this, please let me know in the comments below what you learned from season 10, or even go through that clarity session where you reflect, think about what you did in season 10, and get back to me in my Discord, which I'll put a link in the YouTube description below, of what you learned from season 10 upon reflecting. As always, guys, cheers and good luck on the Rift.